Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham. Just leave it at that. It's a complicated story. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, this is that complicated, really. Just don't want to be bothered. Anyway, so there's this guy called Blithering Genius. Probably should be called Literate Idiot. Because, yes, he's a little bit literate, but he's an idiot. You have to be to defend life. I mean, frankly, it's just so overtly in your face. If you calculate out the facts or pay any attention to them, there's nothing to be proud of here. The human race has not managed its existence well. All the living things are just described as sitting in the bowl of a meat grinder, just waiting for their turn to be ground up in this pointless struggle that's often insanely difficult. I mean, you earn every one of your scars. You look at people in the more native condition and you see, they have a shorter life, and they look like they're 80 when they're 35. Life isn't easy, and it's a struggle. And what is the definition of winning? Creating losers. So you make a game called Make Losers, right? That's winning. And you play it. Well, then you're an idiot. There's nothing else to say. So I'm just saying, when you add up all the facts, it's just a dismal story, a sad and pathetic one. It's just sad. I mean, it's sad that these attributes of consciousness and awareness and intelligence come with this liability of, well, the only way you derive them is through this sentient mechanism, and where we've been engineered by a biological system to basically just crush, kill, and destroy. It's just a sad story. But let it go. I mean, why would these people use whatever intelligence they have to defend something that's just undefendable? I mean, it's just notions in their head of some sort of accomplishment. There's no way they can create any sentences explaining what they've done except I had an imaginary thought in my head that I'm wonderful and that life is good. But you don't have any evidence. You don't have anything to back it up with except, yes, winning is a very good game. I mean, making losers is a really good idea. No, it isn't. Only a literate idiot could think so. But anyway.
7,000 videos on the subject.
So he's griping about the fact that I have 1,000 videos on the subject. Yeah, books are really thick too. You must really hate those because books take time to read because there's lots of ideas that have to be developed. Ugh.
I don't know how many videos he's made. He probably has something like 5,000 hours of video, I would guess. Anyway.
Whatever. Who cares? What does it have to do with this subject of effilism? Oh, that's right. Absolutely nothing. If somebody who's talked about it a lot, so what? There's gurus and all kinds of people that have been talking for thousands of years about bullshit. You're going to critique that too? Well, who are your heroes? Your philosophical heroes. And let's see how much jabbering they did. Probably Nietzsche and Kant, right? You seem like a Nietzsche-Kantian bastard. Bastard of those two idiotic philosophies of half religion and half Nietzsche nihilism. Anyway, continue, douche.
This is going to be a more concise presentation of effilism, and it's not just a presentation of the philosophy of effilism, it is also going to be a critique of it.
Yeah, well, you can't critique what you don't understand, and, well, frankly, okay, so he seems to gloss it over, but, use his own vernacular, his own verbiage, his own words that he puts in people's mouths as if they would say things like that, like morality or hedonism, words that nobody who's a functioning effilist would use because they don't capture at all the essence of the subject.
And I'm going to try to pack that all into a fun-filled hour or so. So what is effilism? Effilism is...
All right, so I'll read it for him. Effilism is the philosophical rejection of life. That doesn't even mean anything. It's a philosophical, understanding of life as being things like inefficient, unproductive, no net gain, not profitable, What would be the opposite of not profitable? Let me think. Yeah, loss. Okay, that you're running. It's not a good idea. It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting thing. It's got an interesting history. 4 billion years, 2 billion active years of evolution. It's a nice story in terms of it's got all kinds of interesting characters grew out of it, tyrannosauruses and whatnot, lots of stuff on Earth to find interesting. But it's a tragedy, a horrible, awful tragedy that all these organisms over all these millions of years have endured all these horrible, awful experiences. Conscious experiences of being dissolved in the stomach of another organism. Just Freddy's nightmare, right? You could just say there's not any difference between a Freddy nightmare movie and the natural world. It's just as bad. The birds fly, kicked out of the nest because you're number 3 and you're not allowed to be number 3. Only 2. Just no, number 3, too many. So fuck you. Kicked in the face. Kicked to the curb. And left to be dissolved in something's belly. Yes, I reject that as a good idea. If that's what you have to make your cake out of, if your little fun cupcake has to be made out of that, if you fail, it fails to be a good idea. It fails to be a good design. If you're looking at the architectural blueprints, you say the damn thing's upside down. You got the roof in the basement, you got the basement, the cement on the roof, you got it all backwards, fuckhead. So yeah, don't build it. I mean, unless you want me to call you a fucking idiot, a sadistic fucking idiot, because you're just going to cause a bunch of harm. So yeah, that's what effilism is. It's a recognition that, yes, although life is fascinating, it's also tragically hard. The price paid for it is insanely too high. It's such a non-bargain that no rational person buys it. Only somebody with some sort of insane motivation. I don't know what your motivation is to defend this slop. What is your motivation? You're expecting a big inheritance or something? I can only imagine it's some personal thing for you.
The philosophical rejection of life. The term effilism comes from life spelled backwards. Life spelled backwards is effil.
Who cares? You have to tell them that much, then this game is really over, right? You're writing a book to complete idiots. Yeah. You have to tell them what life spelled backwards is?
And thus, effilism. As far as I know, Inmendham coined the term and invented the philosophy.
Yeah, well, I only did that because nobody else could say something like an idea and put it into some sort of words. So they were using words like antinatalism, which really doesn't have a damn thing to do with it. And so, yes, there was no word, so I had to make one. So I made a cheap one. Really inexpensive. I didn't pay much for it.
At least in the form that I'm going to present here.
Whatever. Your form that you're going to present here, that's not my form. Won't be my form.
Other people have viewed life as bad, either emotionally or perhaps philosophically.
Yeah, it's whatever that even means. Emotionally. I don't know. Other people have said, I don't want to. They said something like that before. Or they committed suicide. Yes, that's sort of a commentary on the function of life. You could argue that some of that was emotional. My boyfriend doesn't love me. I have to kill myself. Some sort of personal bullshit. And yes, people have in the past philosophized on what are the consequences of there being no God. Aren't we really in deep shit? And that's the simple purpose, right? A simple point to be made is, yeah, it's unintelligent design. Guess what? The drawing sucks. Don't bake this cake because it will make you sick. And all you assholes are basically saying is, well, I didn't get ALS and I didn't have any bad luck and I'm doing okay, so life must be okay. And that's all you're doing. You're just going from your own personal perspective as you're walking out of Las Vegas, the winner, thinking you're a big winner. And you're not accounting for the fact that you just made a lot of losers. You're just a selfish douche.
But not based on the same philosophical arguments. So what I'm going to present is Inmendham's worldview as I understand it. I have to add that caveat because he might not agree if he listens to this.
That's right. He might not, and you already know about that. You know I might not agree, because you might be using language and words that I never ever used in a single video ever.
We'll see. Okay, so here are the foundations of effilism. As I understand it, these are the foundations of Inmendham's worldview. The first is evolution, or more broadly, biological realism. And
so that's something I never said ever, right? I never said biological realism. I never say that kind of jerky jargon. So he says life is selfish and violent. Well, I never use those words either. I mean, in the concept of selfish, yes, that's a problem in the fact that yes, you can't do the understanding Las Vegas thing if you just go based on selfishness, right? Your selfish desire to increase your gain and your ability to ignore the fact that you're taking it out of somebody else's pain. So yes, it's very easy to say, yes, I'm going to marry the prettiest woman, and I'm just going to pretend I don't know that there was some other guy who would have made her much happier and was better looking and was lots of stuff, but I'm going to sneak my way in and fuck up the game. And you just don't pay any attention to that part. So you just pay attention to the part that involves you, and you don't pay attention to the parts that involve everybody else. And that's ignorant, frankly. There's no other word for it, but you're just being ignorant. You're just being ignorant. I mean, it's just a fact. You're being ignorant, okay? It requires you to be ignorant not to understand how bad evolution is. And he's going to sit there and right here, he's going to sit there and say some of this stuff, and you're just saying, how can he miss it? All right, well, number 2, he brings up the asymmetry, which is, that's a Benatar argument. I called it zero sum, okay, because there's nowhere to gain. There's no true goods. There's only fixing the negative tsunami wave thing that's coming for you. So you can hold off death. You can hold off losing in different respects. You can buy a toupee. You can do lots of things to, pretend your way through existence. But yes, that's all you're doing. You're defending yourself against the fact that it's all swords on the ceiling. They're all swords hanging up there. There's no fucking golden unicorn of accomplishment sitting up there. They're all just swords that you can dance around and pretend, yeah, I'm a winner because the sword went through that guy's head instead of mine. That's all you're doing. That's the best game you can play, is to just make something else do the losing. And you're going to die in the end anyway, and here you are. The asymmetry is you shouldn't have an opinion, a positive opinion about something when you never ate it. And you've never eaten death, fuckhead. So don't tell me it tastes good. You don't know. Don't tell me it's well worth it. Oh, the magic dying cupcake is so good. Yeah, fuck you. You didn't do it. You haven't eaten it. Prove it. I mean, sorry, this is so easy to counter-argue. It doesn't even, you take it trivially because you're saying these are such stupid arguments. All right, and then hedonism. I mean, again, it's a word I've despised in my videos. Pointed out how this is just not a right word to use for anything I've ever said in my existence. Hedonism is chasing glory. That's the real definition of it. It's just bullshit to say hedonism has something to do with acknowledging risk and suffering. No fucking way. You're just changing the definition of a word and using it to slander me, you fucking little piece of turd. So yeah, fuck you for that. Pleasure is intrinsically good. Never have I said that. So again, you lose again. Yes, it's intrinsically unbad. That's what it is, asshole. Okay? Not having a sword coming through you is good, right? It's intrinsically good that you don't have polio. Yes, of course. But it's not good because it's a good. It's good because it's a not bad. It's an unbad. It undoes a bad. It prevents a bad. That's a good. So, these are our important word distinctions. Yes, pain is intrinsically bad. Yes, the first ouch. The ouch came first, unfortunately for us. Okay, there was no good that came first. No, there was the threat of the whip, and we just walk around saying, hey, I didn't get whipped today, and we feel pretty damn good about it. Okay, and nothing else is intrinsically valuable, right? So all you have is bad and unbad. So you're really in trouble, really. You can't make anything good out of that. All right, intrinsically good. And then altruism. Again, another, I've certainly said the word, but this doesn't have anything to do with any notion of altruism. It just has to do with a simple equation. Are you going to be a good robot or a shitty robot? Period. Because you're just a fucking robot. And the argument is the function of your existence through life, your little blood footprint, is your blood footprint going to be acceptable or unacceptable? How much of it did you spill for whatever defenses and protections you earned through it? How much did you exploit and fuck things over? So again, he has perverted things to his own purpose here. I would say there's nothing else to call that but very dishonest, to play with words that I avoided like the plague, altruism and hedonism. I always pointed out that there's probably no way to be truly altruistic because you always have to find the emotional advantage to be able to motivate yourself. So why play with the fucking word? There is, as a practical fact, an effect in the world. You either affect it to improve it or you make it lesser, in the sense that you cause more pain or you alleviate more pain in the future. And that's all there is. And by that equation you define something called ethics. But that's it. I made that clear in those thousands of videos.
The important implications of the theory of evolution is that life is selfish and violent. This is very hard for most people to accept, that life is not...
Well, whatever that is, that's just mush. I don't think it's that hard to accept. I don't think it's that hard to see. People see it, okay, but they've been brainwashed to think we're doing something that's just so incredibly interesting. Like, oh, we have such great dance moves that you just can't, of course you'll torture a few animals for it. We're just so cool. That's the part that makes no logical sense. I mean, if I did the play of, the humans sacrificing the animal to their god, I mean, most people nowadays would get it and say, oh, that's pretty fucking gross. What the fuck are you people doing? Throwing virgins into the fucking volcano. I mean, if I did that play and showed, oh, look, this is really cool, isn't it? We're sacrificing things to God. What's the difference, right? You're just sacrificing all of the stuff that won't work out so you can walk out of your Vegas with your extra dollars and say, I'm a winner, I'm a winner. Same fucking thing.
It's not a little cartoon pony thing. It is creatures killing and eating each other. All right, the second foundation is asymmetry. This is a claim about psychology, that life has more pain than pleasure. Then you have hedonism.
It's not psychology, it's a descriptive facts. The fact is that it's made out of the one thing. And you can imagine, like, oh yeah, my best pleasure. I can imagine it because I've had my best day. But I know I haven't had my worst day. And I know the worst day that's possible to happen to me can be just so, you can just keep saying, well, and then I had a broken arm. You can just add the headache to, the brain infection to fungus on your feet to, and then you can always break your fingers, and then you can always break your arm, and then you can always break something else. I mean, you can always add to how deep the negative can go. But frankly, the positive doesn't have very far to go, right? I had a little 2-second thing, 27 seconds worth of some kind of bliss, and then I fell asleep. Oh yeah, that was a great day. I mean, sorry, you can't go anywhere with the pleasure thing because we already know how that works. You win the lottery today, and a week from now you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I really need another $1 million. And that's just how imbecile it is. I'm just saying. I mean, there's already been tons of satire, written by people like, Monty Python and whatnot, just pointing out how fucking ludicrous our existence is. So I really shouldn't have to explain just how silly your optimism is that you're accomplishing something, douche.
Which is the belief that pleasure is intrinsically good, pain is intrinsically bad, and nothing else matters. Nothing else is...
Nothing else is that. So yes, nothing else is a value engine. Only a biological organism that can create these sensations by having them in their brain can do something called value making. Everything else is incapable. This battery just can't do it. It can only sit there and, it could grow legs and arms, and they could walk over to somebody and hug them and say, I love you. And so it could try to make something that does create value feel better. But that's all it can do. Okay, it can't make value. It can only create it in something else, cause it. It can only have effects on things that make value. So you're kind of screwing that basic one up too. But yeah, that's the reason. Consciousnesses generate a valuable sensation.
It's intrinsically valuable.
Yes, and it's undeniable by anybody rational, frankly. And if they're going to, if like I say, I'm personally testifying. I am conscious, so I know, okay, through personal experience. You really can't deny it. It's so overt in my face. I mean, it's like them trying to tell a witness they didn't see something when they saw it, okay? They sit there and saw the guy reach into the other guy's pocket, steal his wallet, blah, 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 and some asshole shows up and say, no, you're confused. No, I'm not confused. I'm conscious. I know how it works.
Only pain and pleasure. And finally, altruism, the belief that we have a moral duty to others.
So again, he used the two words, altruism, and then said moral duty. So again, and I've made so many videos pointing out how it's such a bullshit word. I've never used any concept of morality. I've only pointed out there's a value equation, and you're either on the right side of it or the wrong side of it. You're making too much negative, or you're not making enough positive, however you want to look at it. But that's right. It has nothing to do with moral duty. It just has to do with whether you want to be a piece of duty. Do you want to be something better than a piece of shit? That's the question. If you've already answered that by I don't care, well then yeah, you're going to fail to be ethically decent, in the sense that you're going to fail to be minimally functional. You're just going to be a fucking menace, a little piece of fungus, or a blight, a little plague.
And in the Effilis version of morality, we have a duty toward all sentient life. All right, now I'm going to expand on these foundations.
You have a duty to be rational and reasonable, and if you think it's reasonable to torture things for your pleasure, I'm saying it's unreasonable. That's the ethical duty. It's not any more complicated than that. You think you have some sort of right to take your food out of somebody else's hide. I'm saying, where did you get that right from? You didn't win it in any intellectual battle. You didn't win it by making a great argument. You just took it. Frankly, period. End of the story.
Evolution. Life is intrinsically selfish and violent. Human beings do not transcend evolution or biology with our wonderful brains or anything else about us, or consciousness or anything like that. This is built into the
I don't know. Again, transcending it would require you to compensate for it. So the simple truth is it has these big negative features. Now the argument is, does this car pollutes and creates plague, leaves plague behind, little coronaviruses. It's got these huge negative liabilities. Now your obligation is to point out what its positives are. It has a loud horn. It's just not good enough. Oh yeah, it has a really great horn. Yeah, no, not good enough.
Nature of life, because life reproduces to excess, and then the excess is culled because...
Well, obviously it's not for the purpose of excess, it's for the perfect of engineering perfection. So it's a gang war that every genetic individual is committing against the world, attempting to take it over. And yes, but how you want to describe the fact that evolution runs on the idea of destroying more product, okay, than it ever preserves. So, I mean, the waste is in huge proportions. 99% waste for 1% value.
There's a competition over finite resources. So many more are created than could possibly make it to adulthood and reproduce themselves. An example that inmendham often uses is the octopus.
Well, what I often use now are examples that emphasize the fact that this is a child molestation, that this is no better than you endorsing a sadistic killer of children, somebody who mass murders, molests and mass murders children, because the predominance of the victims will be little baby lions and little baby zebras and little baby everythings, and they're going to be torn to pieces, in all kinds of stages of their maturation. So it's just, you might as well just imagine a bunch of little 13-year-old girls, trapped under gas trucks, burning to death. And that's what you're endorsing for whatever it is you think human beings are doing that's so fucking spectacular. You're saying it's okay. And I am saying you're worse than, you're worse than a Hitler, frankly. You're worse than the guards at the concentration camps. You're worse than the worst villains. To sit there and say that it's okay with you. You don't mind watching it, participating in it, talking about it, maligning it, trivializing it, doing all this horse shit, because you don't have to endure it in your little life. And your little brain is so small that you can't figure out that your life is just one tiny shred of what the whole game is. And that you will, in fact, but you're too stupid to understand, you will, in fact, live it. Because something will live it. And all the somethings are, in a sense, the same something, because it's a Borg. You're just a robot. And yes, you came out this way this time, but you'll come out that way the next time, and you'll play the roles. All the roles are going to be played by the same thing called a consciousness. And you're subjecting it to molestation, torture, and death for absolutely no good, rational reason. You're just a trite, silly person defending molestation and murder. You're disgusting.
An octopus will have, I don't know, if it lives to adulthood, if it lives to maturity and mates, then a female octopus might have 10,000 eggs. And these eggs will all hatch to little baby octopuses. The female will guard the eggs. And
well, let's understand it. Octopus is an interesting organism because it's fairly intelligent for a sea creature. And guess what? It's fairly intelligent from birth. It's it might be a little tiny octopus, but the truth is it's pretty much just as functional as the adult. It pops out, already knowing some stuff and being functional, unlike us. So it doesn't come into the world unconscious blob of shit. It comes into the world an active player. And the majority of the little beasties will be killed in that stage, in this stage of attempting to get to their maturity. And there's going to be an intense struggle for every little meal and for every advantage to have the fish eat your brother instead of you. And that's an insidious position to put some little baby thing in, isn't it? Where it has to calculate, well, I don't really like my sister that much. Go ahead and feed her to the barracudas. Why would somebody subject a feeling little creature to that circumstance? Why would they put them in that playing that role? There's no good reason for all of that horror. Shit, I mean, I'll just emphasize, there is no good reason. You're not going to provide one anywhere in this video. You're just going to play little word games to say somehow, I think it's okay because it doesn't bother me any. And that's it.
Eventually probably die as a consequence of her reproductive act and her sacrifice on behalf of her babies. And then these 10,000 little babies will go out into the world and start getting eaten by sharks and moray eels and all kinds of other creatures, right? And out of that 10,000, on average, only 2 can live to adulthood to start the cycle over.
Right, 2 scarred, very scarred individuals, because they've basically thrown their, a lot of brothers and sisters they've thrown through the sharks. They've done a lot of nasty things probably to gain their food. They've taken it out of somebody else's mouth, done a lot of little cheating and stealing to get what they got. They're going to be plenty scarred, plenty beat up, and they're the winner. And we haven't even talked about the 99 losers for that winner, right? The 999 or the 9,099 losers So that's the best of the story, is this pretty crappy story of the winner. And we haven't even done one of the loser stories yet. And you're saying that somehow when you write that book, you can make it make sense. So I write the book, Octopus. All right? I spend 1 page describing, or 2 pages, describing the life of the big winner. Right? Let's give them all 2 pages each. And you're telling me after you've read the 999 loser stories, when you read that winner story, you're just so overwhelmed with joy and enthusiasm that you just can't wait to make the game again. Do it again, please. I love that shit, the pushing your brother into the barracuda's mouth. I love it. It's great stuff. Come on, give me some more. I mean, what the fuck?
Again, right? Because if more than 2 lived to maturity and did the same thing, then the population would explode, right? So this is built into the nature of life. Life is constrained by competition, and therefore life is intrinsic.
Constrained? What do you mean it's constrained? No, it's defined in its stupidity by this idea that robot A is going to beat up robot B, and that's going to accomplish something. When, of course, we're not even evolving anymore, right? We don't pick our mates by evolution standards anymore. We don't have kids that way. Nothing's happening that way anymore. So we're not even evolving. That constraint has absolutely 0 positive value anymore. It has no positive value. You're just arbitrarily saying, I like the red Coke machine more than the blue Coke machine, because a red thing was nice to me once. I mean, it's fucking moronic, your logic.
Selfish and violent. Well, that's why it's intrinsically violent and it's intrinsically selfish, because organisms are selected to reproduce, which is a selfish act. It's selfish in the sense that
not anymore. So again, it's whatever. Not all organisms.
It's for the perpetuation of your genetic information. It's not for the perpetuation of others or to make others feel.
Look, it's not for creating life. It's for creating a DNA molecule. So let's all understand. The only thing evolving is the molecule. We're just all the little demonstration models that go out and prove the molecule's viability. So we're just fodder for the evolution of little tiny genome. That's it.
Good, or anything else. We're not selected to do anything other than reproduce. And to do that, we have to compete with others. So that's why we are selfish and violent.
No, that's why it's stupid as a game. The game called Evolve is a stupid game. Evolved by ignorant, stupid, unintelligent design rules. Yes, that's just plain fucking idiotic. And then none of those rules, right? We didn't apply intelligent design to the rules, right? So we took evolution's stupid game and we made it even stupider, where 2 idiots, 2 people with 65 IQs have 5 kids.
Like every other life form. And also, the cosmos as a whole has no purpose. This is like the rejection of a religious or mystical view of the cosmos and human.
No, it's like you didn't go ahead and make up some fairy story. This is just saying, oh, well, I'm not going to make up some 3 bear story. The cosmos is a thing. It's a real thing, the universe, the idea of stuff existing. But yes, it can be understood as just that. It doesn't have any magical properties. It doesn't have any, there's no secret pile of magic dust it has in its pocket or something that redeems all crime. There's nothing it's doing. It can't heal any wound. It can't please any other conscience. If this battery were the universe, the battery can't really go somewhere and hug something and say it's okay and everything will be all right. And blah, blah. It can't do anything valuable to the universe. It can't fix anything broken. And that's all there is for intelligence anyway. That's its only function. Its only viable function is to prevent, is to use the intelligence to fix something. Otherwise, there's nothing to do with intelligence.
Humanity's place with
You have to make a problem before you can solve a problem. And the universe doesn't have a problem until it makes a sentient organism. Then there's a problem.
in the cosmos and within nature. Inmendham has what you could call a naturalistic view.
Oh, fuck you. So again, he's describing my philosophy with rhetoric, again, that I would find just totally abhorrent. Naturalistic. Oh, like there's something else. No, it's fucking called rational and realistic. But no, he won't use those terms.
A view that is limited to physics and biology. It does not contain any
physics. You don't even need the biology part, but yes, it's basically based on things that are factual, not notions in people's heads that are made out of, gingerbread. There's no fucking gingerbread villages in Candyland and whatever chocolate streams or any Wonka, weebles that wobble and don't fall down bullshit.
Spiritual or phantasmagorical components. All right. The next one is asymmetry.
Take a little pause. Alright, should be back. So we're on the asymmetry, which again, my version of the argument before I even heard of Benatar was zero sum. That all you really do in our existence is we're born in a dungeon, a cellar, and we spend our lives clawing and beating up our neighbors and doing all this stuff to try to climb our way to the sunshine, so to speak. And if we're lucky, we get a glimpse of it now and then. We get close, but we never walk on the earth. So we never accomplish the task. All you can do is undo the negatives. There's no paradise to go find. There's only whip to stop. And that's it. Nothing else is driving you but some whip of insecurity or incompleteness or dissatisfaction. And dissatisfaction won't solve anything. I fix it, you'll find something else broken.
The asymmetry claim is that life has more pain than pleasure. Now, I want to...
Obviously, the depth, the kinds of... how bad the bad can get is almost infinite. I mean, you can go really, really horrible. Lots of horrible lives to describe, lots of horrible events, even if it's not alive, just one day of whatever horror, and you would say, I would never, I wouldn't live the 99 years for that one day. Lots of bad you can pull out of that, and the pleasures are, when looked at and viewed with any kind of inspection, take a magnifying glass and pick at them at all, and it's all just cheap paint. It's all glitter and crap. It's not made of much. All the winning is trivial, superficial, and unenduring.
Point out this because it's kind of important. This is a truth claim about the nature of subjective experience.
It's a truth claim about the fact that we have experience. Subjective is just a word they inject to make, we're going to try to make it into crap. We're going to try to imply it doesn't have real meaning because it's somehow subjective. Who cares? We have real experiences, period. Okay? As a conscious organism, it's really happening. Now you can pretend, I can't draw a mechanical picture of the consciousness smoke. So therefore, the consciousness smoke can't exist. Well, frankly, I'm experiencing it, so that argument is kind of bullshit right there. So if your physics theory is there is no such thing as consciousness, I'm going to argue there's something wrong with your physics then, okay? Yeah, maybe you'll never see it as mechanical smoke coming out of a smokestack, but it's obviously a mechanical process and it's actually happening. And if you deny that, then yes, you're a science denier. You're an idiot. It's a phenomenon. It's really happening. And there's no way to evade that reality, and in my opinion, and still be rational. And that's all they're really going to do. This whole thing will hang on the fact that they're going to make the conscious experience some sort of fake thing. And so they're going to basically trivialize your suffering and say it doesn't mean anything. You don't know how cool it really is. The real universe, okay? Yeah, it really doesn't mean anything. Bullshit.
So that makes it kind of interesting because usually when we make truth claims, we are making them about objective reality.
And again, it's an objective fact that we feel. It's an objective fact that we consciously experience every day we wake up and we interact with the world. We're having something that's really happening. You want to pretend it's not really happening, you have that prerogative, but I'm just going to say, God, you're a despicable cunt. I mean, how dare you insult all of the things that have gone on in this adventure we've been, even just as humans. The people who have, marched through the trenches and been burned to death on the aircraft carriers and all the other bullshit, all the heroic moments, all the glorious ones and all the horrible ones. And he's basically negating it all and saying it all didn't mean anything. Well, fuck you.
Right? Like I might say, there's milk in the fridge. That's a truth claim about objective reality. And most of our...
Yes, and there's feelings happening in my brain. It's just a fact. I'm just saying, I'm experiencing it. So you want to tell me it isn't really happening, well, go ahead and try to tell me that. But I'm just going to say, fuck you, you're insane. And you're insane by something pretty fundamental. I mean, I'd almost say I have a right to, we have a right to have a duel or something. Because that's just so insulting. It's so preposterously stupid for you to deny me my actual experience and say it's not happening because you're not experiencing it. Maybe you're not conscious. Okay. I mean, maybe that's a fact. I don't think it is. I don't think there's any evidence that your brain works any different than mine. And the very fact that you're insulting your own personal experience to sit there to play this game to justify being an asshole, and that's all it is. She's just trying to justify being an asshole by saying there's nothing to lose here. Nothing matters. Ugh, disgusting.
Truth claims are about objective reality. But if I were to say, I feel sad...
and feeling sad is a fact. So, I feel sad. Okay, yes, I mean, as a sentence, you're not saying very much, but yes, it's a fact that I feel sad would be perfectly reasonable. That, in the course of human events, there was, 45 minutes where I felt sad. Yes, it did actually happen on planet Earth. So why is this a debatable subject? You can't just sit there and say, oh, it's a subjective experience. So what? It's still a real experience. Shit.
That is a truth claim about my subjective experience. The asymmetry claim is a claim about the general nature of subjective experience.
No, it isn't. So this is just more, again, you don't need the word subjective. So it's a truth claim about experience. Period. Yes, it's a truth claim about experience. Not subjective, objective. No, experience. The fact that we have them. Aye.
That it has more bad feelings than good feelings. And
no, that the bad potential is much heavier than the good potential, because there is no good potential. You're just eliminating a whip. So that's really dumb to think you're winning when all you're doing is losing less, right? Losing less isn't winning. That is the basic argument. And then you can go into all the complications of the argument, which has to do with our exploitation and the fact that to win, you often have to create these things called losers. And that's just a fact. It's very hard to figure out how you get more cash in your pocket without it not being in somebody else's pocket. If it wasn't in your hand, it would have been in somebody else's hand. And that's just the physical reality. So you can keep pretending that you can keep winning without taking it out of somebody else's pocket, but it's not a fact. You can't actually do that. Now, maybe you can take it from a bigger crook than you, a bigger awful person. Mussolini can steal some of Hitler's money, and then you can say, I'm a really great guy because I stole some of Hitler's money. Well, that doesn't change the fact that, yes, still you've already exploited other people to make other dollars. The fact that you stole a few from a person more evil than you doesn't fix all of your other crimes.
There are two different arguments that I've heard Inmendham make for this view. I should have said, by the way, that pain, the way I'm using it here, covers all negative emotional experiences.
So again, he said emotional experiences. There's nothing emotional about your leg being broken. There's nothing emotional about being dissolved inside of the stomach of a snake. Fuck you, this emotional crap. This is how it's just such a... They always have to resort to these petty perversions. To say Inmendham said... No, Inmendham never said anything about this fucking distinction between emotional and physical in terms of what's the difference anyway. It doesn't matter. I mean, if there's a retarded person and he's scared to death of a piece of chalk, It doesn't matter whether it's a piece of chalk or an actual cobra or a tarantula. What's the difference? The experience still happened. Doesn't matter why it happened. It only matters that it did happen. So if people are emotional about things and enduring pain, and yes, it's pain they maybe shouldn't be having because they have emotionally misunderstood the circumstance, and it's not really a threat or it's not really a bad and it made them sad, like grandma dying. Well, it's probably a good thing because she was old and debilitated and her life sucked. So you probably should be all celebrating and having cupcakes and saying, oh, grandma's finally free of all that harassment. She's finally at peace and all that. You should be celebrating instead of, oh, I'm all upset. Yeah. So yes, there's lots of emotions that are wasted. But the fact that people can waste their emotions doesn't mean that the emotion wasn't real and that the event of having it wasn't really bad. So again, they just keep trying to trivialize experience, make it go away, make it mean nothing, so they can steal all they want then.
So it's not just physical pain like stubbing your toe or having a headache or something like that. It covers all negative emotions like sadness, fear, anger, anything that's got a negative aspect.
Tedium, irritation. You know how fucking irritating you are? You're so fucking irritating. Ugh. Nauseating even. Ew. It's nauseating having to watch people be this disgusting. I mean, you got your head so far up your little stinky ass, and I'm sitting here having to watch it. Ew.
To it. Any kind of emotional experience that feels bad is what I mean by pain. And Inmendham often uses the word suffering for this.
Yes, the human race uses the word suffering. So that's the one I use. Yes, it seems a decent enough coverage of this whole idea of really bad experience. A big pile of, experience of the negative kind you would call a pile of suffering. Oh, there's a pile of it over there.
So anyway, the first argument is that pain or suffering is the primary form of emotional experience, and pleasure is just a reduction, so a secondary aspect of it, a reduction in it. So the real thing is the suffering, and then if you reduce the suffering, you take away.
It's just which one comes first, this yin and yang. You can make the argument which one comes first, the breaking or the making. And so yes, the point is the breaking comes first, and the breaking, a lot of it's left over. It doesn't get fixed. So there's a lot of broken bits, pains that are never compensated by a gain. So you're a lot of prices being paid, a lot of money going over the counter, not too much product coming back. So it's a bad deal. The net deal is a shitty deal, is the simple argument. You somehow think it's otherwise, and I don't see how you can rationally look at any of the biological equations on Earth and come up with somehow, things were in a nice, comfortable state a lot more time than they were in a negative state, even as a timed equation. And certainly in a magnitude equation, it becomes impossible to say, oh, I slept really well last night. Therefore, go ahead, torture some people, because I had a really nice dream and I was comfortable. So go ahead and torture some shit for that. I mean, it's a trivial good.
The need or the deprivation, then you feel pleasure. And this argument implies that for every sentient being, life has more pain than pleasure. The second...
I don't even make that assertion, but I would argue that in the net balance, there's blood, and it's spilt, and the color of the whole thing is red. The anti-red color is so minimal that there's no indication of anything but red.
Argument I've heard him make is that life has more losers than winners.
10,000 to 1 kind of ratio.
Based on our understanding of evolution, which I just talked about, that there are more losers than winners, more baby octopuses that get chewed up by sharks than get to grow up and have orgasms.
So right there, we should be done with this conversation. Right there, you should be conceding the point. Well, that's something I can't fix. Yeah, those numbers are just insane. When you go, especially in the ocean, everything makes 10,000 babies. I mean, everything almost. It's disgusting. The carnage. And realistically, even there's lots of mammals on Earth that really only 1% of them die of old age. I mean, they all get dragged to the ground and murdered. Every one of them finally. I mean, if all of us got murdered by a crook or something, like that's how like 99% of the human race died, was some sadistic kook tortured us and molested us and raped us and then killed us. Would you still support the game?
So even if some sentient beings have a great life, the orgasm at the end it makes it all worthwhile. Most of them just end up getting eaten by the shark. So on average, or in the great majority of cases, life.
Yeah, again, you're testifying that life is worth it, and you haven't died yet. So I mean, it's I know that's kind of a boogery thing for me to do, to sit there and force you to die before you can give testimony saying how it's worth it. But I just think it is as a fact just very bogus that you're sitting here testifying to how life is worth it, and you really haven't lived it yet. And you certainly haven't lived the worst of it. So, it's how much credibility should I take your testimony as being worth when you haven't experienced the worst of it, and you haven't experienced the inevitable total of it, which is the disappointment of your last few days. When maybe you realize, oh, I was a stupid putz for defending life, wasn't I? Maybe if you on your deathbed you start gaining some perspective, and you realize, oh, I sentenced more people to do this stupid slop. When you start reflecting on your life and how much of it just centered on what's in it for me, how much of your petty, stupid little personal ambition got in your way. Ugh. Get what you deserve, scum shit.
Is more bad than good. And I should point out that the first argument is about the asymmetry of psychology. The second is about the asymmetry of biology.
So again, more horseshit. There's no asymmetry of psychology, so that's just horseshit. So no one makes that argument. There's a psychological asymmetry. So this is more word games. The asymmetry is about the fact that there's not proportionality between the wonder of your pleasures and the reality of the pains. The fact is, you don't need to exist. There's no accomplished here. There's nothing broken that needs you to show up to fix it. And it's just a fact. And that's a huge asymmetry.
So there are two different kinds of asymmetries that Inmendham appeals to when he's making the argument for the asymmetry of emotional experience.
So again, I never make the argument for that, so that's just a horseshit terminology. You put words in my mouth that have nothing to do with what I advocate for or what I say, so fuck you for that.
And it matters a little bit which of these arguments you believe, but it doesn't really affect the conclusion very much. Okay, the next one is hedonism. Hedonism is the...
So again, he just redefined the word hedonism, okay? It's never had this definition. Hedonism always had a bias towards pleasure and always a bias towards ignoring risk. So hedonists would say, hedonists are like the people who got AIDS after we already knew what AIDS was and how you get it. And they just didn't care because they wanted their pleasure and they didn't want to take responsibility for how to get it. So you could argue that the same thing is with other diseases like syphilis, people who just were willing to take insanely stupid risks and paid for it, a very high price. But hedonism is all about chasing the glory and the pleasure. The word never was associated with valuing suffering or valuing risk.
View that pain and pleasure are the ultimate source of value. Pain is definitively bad, pleasure is definitively good. This is the foundational value assumption of effilism.
No, it isn't. So again, it's been clearly stated that the pleasure isn't intrinsically good, that you're not accomplishing anything with it. It doesn't need to exist in the universe. It has no function except to the fact that you're not in pain. The ungoodness of it is the only goodness it has, the unbadness, I mean. So the unbadness of your pleasure is the only value it has. Yes, it's not bad. But that doesn't make it a good. So it's not foundational.
This view is presented as self-evident. It is presented as a self.
Oh, so more garbage. No, the view is built into the fact that I'm conscious. It's evident to me as a conscious organism. I'm testifying to something I'm actually experiencing. I'm not testifying to something that I don't have evidence for. I'm internally experiencing it. Now, yes, I cannot sample other people's consciousness and say, yes, it's the same thing. But we have every reason to believe the mechanism is very similar. Every good reason to believe. And so until you provide a shred of evidence that my testimony, coming from the fact that I'm actually tasting consciousness, is somehow flawed or incorrect. So why don't you just prove to me that having a nail in your eye would be just as good as having a cupcake? Why don't you just prove it by sticking a fucking nail in your eye?
Evident truth that requires no justification. So it's not presented as a claim, like as a truth claim that might require some, empirical argument.
So again, this is all bullshit. It's clear, okay? I mean, you're not going to undo my reality by just slandering it, by just calling it a name. Your consciousness is silly. It doesn't really exist. Your experience doesn't mean anything. The very fact that you saw it, you experienced it, you felt it, doesn't mean anything. Fuck you. Until you have some reasoning to back that up, it's a meaningless statement. I have every fucking right to pay attention to my own sensations, to catalog them and describe them. That's perfectly within my fucking rights, you lunatic. Now, the fact that you seem unconvinced, okay, because you're some cyborg that doesn't have any feelings, that doesn't have experiences, and so you're saying, well, what the fuck is an experience? You're clueless. Well, I'm sorry you're clueless, but it doesn't change the fact. And even an AI, even an artificial intelligence that didn't have any sensations, yes, he can't know what a sensation is, but he can certainly know from the testimony of the organism feeling something, hey, you have to take this seriously, butthole. It's not just something like, oh, you say you're having a bad time. What does that mean? I've never had a bad time, so how do I know what a bad time is? I mean, but this is stupid. To play this game that I somehow have to prove the existence of my conscious experience. Fuck you.
To justify it, Inmendham presents it as obvious or even sometimes as logical. If people disagree with him on this, he usually just dismisses them.
Yes, I dismiss you as being a fake, a fraud, a phony, and a liar. To sit there and tell me you don't understand the cavern of difference between your good feelings and your bad feelings, that it isn't an absolute fact that they are valuably different, that there's a value difference between having a nail shoved in your motherfucking eye and having a cupcake. There's a huge value difference between those two experiences. If I have to explain that to another conscious organism that knows some language, then that's too ludicrous. Yeah, I should just stick a fucking something much bigger than a nail right through your fucking useless, stupid brain, because it's a lying sack of shit. Okay, you're a dishonest piece of crap to pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. The cavern of value difference between your positive sensations and your negative sensations. You know the fucking difference, so why are you pretending there's no difference?
By calling them a nihilist or something like that. All right, so I've never heard him make any actual
A fucking lunatic.
argument for this claim. He just seems to think it is a self-evident truth that requires no justification.
It's not self-evident. It's evident to every conscious organism that has experienced sensation. It's quite evident to them that there's a huge value difference between their positive sensations and their negative sensations. A huge, gigantic value difference. And if you're denying it, you're not conscious, as the word should be applied. Frankly, you're just not. If you don't understand that difference and you understand it as a value difference, that one is positive, do it again, all that kind of stuff. The other is exactly the opposite, prevent it, stop it, never happen again, please, 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 I don't want to do that. I mean, if that's not your reality, then we can't have a conversation. There's nothing to talk about, because the most important thing in the universe is somehow you've missed it. You don't see it. So you're a fucking lunatic.
I'll talk a little bit at the end about his fallacies and his rhetoric.
Oh, fuck you. There's no fallacy in the rhetoric at all. So this is to play this kind of a word game to defend mass murder is just so despicable. Like I said, even Hitler could figure out that his dogs could feel that, he was a vegetarian. Even fucking Hitler could figure out that it did not matter. Of course it mattered.
As it relates to this assumption. And it's important to note that hedonism situates value within subjectivity.
So more horseshit. It's not situated within subjectivity. The fact is that we're individual brains. Yeah, it's just like individual cars have to do something. Individual machines, individual nuclear power plants melt down. They don't all melt down at once. Individual things do this process. Individual things are one of these machines. Yes, individual things are the robots. And there's nothing subjective about describing the function of the robot. Nobody says the vacuum cleaner is subjectively not as sucky as this vacuum cleaner over here. Nobody makes these fucking calls it subjective because one functions different than the other. So this is just more bullshit fucking rhetoric. More of these fucking nihilist Nietzsche fucking cunts sitting there calling other people hedonists when that's what they are. They're self-absorbed son of a bitches. This is true evil in the world. These deniers of this basic function so they can just pretend they can take.
It's not out there in the objective world. It's not what you do in the world. It's not what happens in the world. It's just how you feel that matters.
The only thing that has value, that's right, if the universe, we take all of life, the planet Earth, we just blow it up, get rid of it. And then I just put one rabbit in the universe, in a little bowl, right? A little oxygen-filled, transparent globe. Well, guess what? The only thing important in the universe is the welfare of that rabbit, as far as we know. I'm just saying, assuming the rest of the universe is as we know the universe around us, which is just rocks and crap. That sentient organism will be the most obvious thing, okay, in need of attention. Nothing intelligent would say, no, I'm going to pay attention to the rock on the moon, and I'm going to ignore the welfare of that rabbit. No intelligence would draw that conclusion. It would have to be a fucking blithering idiot.
Doesn't matter whether you're on a virtual reality headset in a flotation tank, or you're doing something in the real world. All that matters is whether you have good or bad feelings, pleasure or pain. All right.
Yes, that's all your life is going to be made out of, is what you felt and what you caused other things to feel, and everything else won't make any fucking goddamn difference. So all that's going to matter is how many men are going to burn up on the top of the aircraft carrier. All that matters is how many little girls are going to be under the gas truck. All that matters is how many little organisms are going to be ground the fuck up. All right, for this spectacle, for your fucking theater of bullshit, of bloodshed.
And then altruism. Altruism is the belief that we have a moral duty to others.
So more horseshit, his definition. We have a moral duty. No, again, it's wrong words to use. Altruism just means that you've drawn this conclusion that, you can't, it makes sense economically, okay, to minimize how much you have to pay for something. And so you don't pay any more than you have to. So if one man dies to save 10 from the same fate of, pain and suffering and death, then okay. If the world's a better place because of the act, well, that's just a fact. And the fact is that me having a broken leg or somebody else or 10 other people having a broken leg, if that's the equation, right? It's just a simple equation. I get a broken leg or 10 other people have to have one. There's just a simple economics to it. And there's just no denying that, well, if that's all that's going to be different in the two worlds that will exist, my one broken leg or their 10 broken legs, then logically I don't have much of a choice, do I?
Believe that we have a moral duty to all sentient beings, all beings capable of feeling pleasure and pain.
We have a responsibility to acknowledge the price being paid, and it's the price of life. And so if you're going to defend life and you're going to be a pro-life, then you have to defend, this kind of crime being committed, this horrible, undeserved pain and suffering imposed on organisms that had no choice and no will and no intelligence. And so it's like you're saying, let's do laboratory experiments on retards, and you're creating, whole generations of them for the purpose of laboratory experiments, for the fact that you might make a pill that makes your dick harder. And you're saying it's okay. And I'm saying, no, logically this makes no sense at all. You'd have to be an asshole to think that makes sense.
So there's some kind of obligation that exists in the world, or I don't know where it's supposed to come from, but...
Yeah, it comes from your reasoning skills. That's the only place it exists. I don't know where it comes from. It comes from logically adding 2 plus 2. If I know this battery is just as valuable in terms of its capacity to create value, little golden eggs. If they were both little turkeys that laid golden eggs, what's the difference? Why am I sitting there pretending that it matters, that I can play this game, that the only one that matters is this one, and all the rest of them don't matter? And that's all you're saying. Somehow your internal silly notions matter, but all of the factual, actual experiences don't matter. And you have it exactly backwards. Your notions don't matter, and they're what they will experience does.
There is some obligation that we have to others, and this is the foundation.
No, so it's just more bullshit, right? I never phrased it that way, never said it that way. We have any obligation to others. We have an obligation to recognize the truth of the circumstance, and that's the obligation. And the obligation is if we have an obligation to maximize our efficiency. An intelligence knows if I can get more miles per gallon for free just by making a decision to jump on the grenade, then you do it because it's more miles per gallon. It's less pain in the world. The universe experiences less pain. Well, how can I not go with that answer? If that's behind curtain number 3, I have to choose curtain number 3. If curtain number 2 is no, there's 50% more pain, or blah, 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 then yeah, I don't have, those choices aren't rational. It's only one rational choice: best efficiency.
Moral principle of effilism. As with hedonism, it is presented as self-evident. And unlike hedonism...
So more nonsense. So he's calling it hedonism. So he's using the word hedonism to describe the fact that feeling bad is very different than feeling good. That's what he's doing. He's using that disgusting word to talk about the fact that there's a huge value difference between a sentient organism being tortured and a sentient organism being pleasured. Huge value difference. And he's just denying it. Disgusting. He's disgusting. He's so disgusting. It's disgustingly disgusting that some human would do this.
Altruism situates morality in objectivity, in objective reality. Because to you, other minds are out there. They're not in here. They're not in your subjectivity, even though they might, that their feelings are in their subjectivities. But from your perspective...
So he calls them subjectivities. They're brains, asshole. And the fact is this is what brains manifest, consciousness. And the fact is I'm experiencing it, and I know that there's a cavern of value difference between the kinds of experiences I can have. There's a huge value difference. And you're saying there's not. What's your counter argument? What's your defense of that idiotic statement? That it's just subjective, that it doesn't mean anything, that it doesn't have any merit, when it's the most obvious thing I see since I've been on planet Earth. The entire time I've been on planet Earth, I've been acutely aware of the huge value difference between having a bad back and having a good back because of how much pain it causes. It's a huge difference. Not a little difference. It's huge.
Perspective that's out there in the objective world. So there is a kind of conflict between these two value assumptions. The core value assumption, the individual value assumption.
There's absolutely no contradiction to say I'm conscious and I recognize that the other, my sisters were all pretty much just as conscious as I am, and my parents were just as conscious as I am, and all the other people walking around are just as conscious as I am. Fundamentally, no real huge difference. They're going to not enjoy a broken leg just as much as me, or if I, stuck a knife in their ear, they would find it just as unpleasant as I would. But there's no conversation about it. Yes, we're all value engines. We're all creating this value stuff. The value smoke is, leaking out of our smokestack, so to speak. We're in a value state, and where's that? There's no logical disconnect. There's a perfectly rational statement, a perfectly rational connecting the dots. They're obvious, factual dots of existence. I have brain, other things have brain. Brain makes value smoke. There, we're done. What's the flaw in that logic, you fucking insipid kook?
What is good for you and what is bad for you, and the moral value assumption, which is what is morally good, or I guess what is objectively or universally good.
As stated, it's just a value equation. You just add the positive numbers and the negative numbers, and you come up with an end result. Now, we can argue about what's worth what and all that kind of crap. You think your pleasures are all so fucking spectacular, and I don't think they're all that big. And I would argue there really are no red numbers, and it's only your delusion black numbers, and you've just created those out of, perceptual errors. But regardless, even if I conceded your pleasure is a real thing, and it's really special, and it really is meaningful, and it really has value, it's still a tiny number compared to the red numbers.
There is a kind of conflict. I'm not saying that there is a contradiction exactly, but there is a kind of conflict in this, which I'll explain later. I'll try to.
Oh yeah, you'll try to what? To throw more wasted words on a mission to sit there and negate the meaning of suffering. Conscious suffering doesn't mean anything.
It's a little bit hard to explain. All right, so those were the foundations.
As long as it's in them. When I have it, it means something. But yeah, of course, when it's happening to the rest of the universe, who the fuck cares? That's all he's defending.
Of effilism, and from those foundational beliefs, it is very easy to derive the claim that life is bad. Hedonism and asymmetry together imply that life is bad. Now, depending on which argument...
So again, this is just more crap I'd never say. All you have to do is look at the facts. The fact is there is no redeeming purpose because there's no redeeming creation function. It's not intelligent design. It's unintelligent design. It's insanely wasteful. And it's systemic to the function. The whip was invented first. The objects are whipped into performance enhancement. You will push your brother into the barracuda, or you will be punished. It's that simple. You'll pay the price for not doing it. You personally will pay it. And yes, the pain that I'm going to experience is always going to be more real than the pain somebody else is going to experience. I can't feel their pain as a fact, and I can't feel it as a fact. And so I only can feel it in some sort of metaphorical way, and that metaphorical way isn't nearly as powerful as my own incentive to evade experiences, because mine are going to be so much realer than theirs to me. But I can understand that. And that's a huge flaw in your judgment, is apparently you can't understand.
You make for asymmetry, it might be bad for every sentient being or just bad for most sentient beings. But either way, you get the general claim that life is bad.
The function is stupid. It can't perform because it can't do anything that needs doing. There's nothing to fix in the universe. There is no need to play the game. There's no need to put anything at jeopardy. Nothing is accomplished in the function. And there's huge risk of huge losses.
Altruism then implies that we ought to reduce or eliminate sentient life, that it would be immoral to create sentient life.
It's immoral to defend psycho-killing, and that's all you have. That's all the game is. The game is psycho-kill. There's nothing else to do here except psycho-kill. Unless there's a problem like people are idiots and you have to educate them. Well, then you have something to do. Because then you can reduce their psycho-killing. They're psycho-killers, so I can go out and be a psycho-killer. There are things to do that are good, in the fact that there's lots of bad existing to fix because we exist. But if we didn't exist, I wouldn't show up and say, I need to build an amusement park here. No, I don't. I don't need to. Why would I? There's nothing about this laboratory experiment that has any, couldn't pass an environmental impact statement. There's nothing about the game of life that there's no feature that at all redeems it.
And it would be moral to prevent it. To prevent.
Yes, meat grinders suck when they're grinding up living meat. Okay, and so, yes, you don't make one.
Life from ever existing in the future. So if you had the big red button that you could press and wipe out all life on the planet or in the universe, it would be moral to do that.
Yes, if I could shoot Freddy Krueger, in his afterlife, you shoot him because he's just a menace. He's a horrible menace. And life is a menace to the living.
Because that would prevent harm. If life is harmful, then destroying all life prevents harm, right? And in this worldview, there is no greater purpose. There's nothing else to do.
Yes, exactly, as I just pointed out. What else would there to be do? What else is there to do? If there isn't a feeling thing to go comfort, what is there to do? So I hear you now. I don't even have a rabbit in the universe, and I put you in the universe. What the fuck are you going to do? What's your grand idea? Your big plan? Yeah, there's no bleeding wounds to heal. There's no babes to screw. There's no nothing. There's just the universe. How are you going to improve it? With what brilliant idea are you going to improve the universe?
Right? The absence of life would not cause any problems for anyone because there wouldn't be anyone to be inconvenienced by it. Right? So this is Inmendham's non-existent Martian argument that he makes a lot. But basically the point is that life doesn't have some greater purpose. It's not a cog in some big machine. It's not doing something that's good on a larger scale. So eliminating it would not cause any harm to...
It has no real function except to make more blood than it cleans up. Period.
...to anything. And that's effilism in a nutshell. All right. Now, my views. I agree with the effilist understanding of nature and the cosmos, more or less.
Yeah, I don't think you do. Because I think if you understood any of it at all, you'd understand just how bad this is. This is, you're saying my brother, okay, rapes and murders little children. No, yeah, I understand that. But it's okay, it's my brother. I mean, is just as dumb as it is? You have some emotional thing or something? Because it's your brother, somehow it's okay, you don't shoot him. I mean, if it's somebody else's brother, you'd say, oh, what a horrible scumbag, let's run him over. But you can't manage it? You can't manage to get the right answer because he's your brother or something? I mean, what's the catch? What aren't you getting about the facts? The fact is we have every definition of a criminal. We have every definition of a crime. We have every definition of a criminal, and yet you won't convict it. What's the hang-up, asshole? What aren't you getting?
However, I disagree with the other foundations. I disagree with the asymmetry claim. I reject hedonism.
Well, the asymmetry claim is defended best by Benatar, but I mean, it's just too simple an argument, okay, is that the goods only exist as a mechanism of need, and if you don't need them, they can't be. They don't have any function. And the negatives are real and don't have anything to do with need or any other bullshit. They're just a fact. The negatives have real weight. The positives have no real weight. They're helium, They're a bag of nothing.
I reject altruism, and I affirm life and...
whatever that is. I reject hedonism. So he rejects the idea that there's a cavern of value difference between a sentient organism being tortured and being pleasured. He doesn't believe that there's a cavern of value difference between those two things. Even though he would admit it if he was going to be subjected to it, he would pay real money to avoid cancer and other unpleasant events. So he's just a fucking liar, a preposterous fucking liar. And to reject altruism is just to, again, just to say it doesn't matter how much bad you make. you know, because he doesn't think the bad. So it's the first thing that makes the second thing possible. Yes, if you reject the meaning of bad and the fact of it, that there's real negatives to be experienced, a real negative, then yes, of course, altruism can't mean anything, because it doesn't matter if you clean up a mess if there's no such thing called a mess. And that's all he's doing. So he's just finding an excuse to be neither acknowledge the existence of the broken or to be obligated to fix it. But you first have to destroy the meaning of broken before you can say I'm not obligated to fix. And that's all he's done. So he's affirmed life, whatever that means. Affirmed what? A mechanical process of a genetic molecule reproducing itself on a planet as if it has some purpose or function, which is just absolutely silly. What a fucking idiot. So some asshole sent me an email saying, I was convinced by that argument and I'm no longer an anti-natalist. Convinced by what? What argument? He's a fucking idiot. He's a fucking nihilist, self-absorbed asshole making excuses for being a scum. Ugh. I mean, how could anybody with any reasoning skills fall for this? Oh, there's no real difference between how good I feel or how bad I feel. It doesn't matter. Give me a life of complete torture and it'll be just fine with me. They're only saying that shit because it's not a realistic possibility. I'm not allowed to torture them forever. But I mean, they really should be. You know, if there is a psycho killer out there, these are the kind of assholes you should, you know, you should do your evil thing on. You should find one of these fuckers because they really deserve your best treatment. They deserve to be hung up and, you know, hang them up in your attic and really fuck them up. Because they don't get the difference. They don't get that it means something. And I'm sure you really want them to understand it. You know, you're going to feed off of their suffering. Well, they're going to suffer. And you can get them to admit it. You know, just sit there and spend some time working on them. And you'll get them to admit it. Yes, this does really suck. Maybe they'll actually say those words.
Reproduction. So you could say in a way, I'm the opposite. I'm a reproducer. A lifist. Okay, so
Oh, is that the reason why you're making these rationalizations? Because you've fucking recklessly fucked some bimbo, you know, and made some spawn, and here you are wasting your time doing this shit instead of trying to lie your kid into a perspective, right? I mean, what kind of bullshit story you're going to tell your kid? Oh, it doesn't matter how you feel, buddy. You know, run over by a truck, you know, same difference as long as you don't kill you, right? Just make you stronger. So yeah, go out and play in traffic. It'll make you stronger. What a fucking idiot. Desire and symmetry. Let's see. Desire is the psychological mechanism that motivates and I don't know. Evaluates actions. Okay. So again, he turns intelligence into psychology. So evaluations we can make intelligently. So again, it's not about psychology. I don't. 90% of my actions now are probably dictated by some perspective that I've gained through knowledge and time about outcomes. I'm not viscerally reacting or psychologically reacting. I don't just yell to some fat ass walking down the street. I don't go, hey, fat ass, you got a fat ass. Yeah, I don't bother because I know it's not going to do anything good. It's just going to hurt somebody's feelings. Well, anyway. So how much more of this is there? Maybe I'll just make it a two-parter. Oh yeah, we're not even close. All right. But we already got the essence of the argument. This is just the typical nihilist bullshit of I'm going to pretend pain isn't a real thing because it's some kind of psychological event. It's not a brain event. It's not an actual event. It's just some sort of thing that's in some sort of imaginary space and therefore doesn't mean anything. So if you're really that fucked up, if you really think it doesn't matter, like you don't care whether you have a good day tomorrow or a bad day, because bad days are the same difference, really. You can't see the difference. I can't. What am I going to say? If that's what you think, please play in traffic. Please find some way to be killed because you're just a menace on this planet. You're so stupid. Oh, fuck. Well, anyway. Ugh, disgusting people. Ugh. Anyway, okay, so part 2 coming eventually and such.